the hell, Jay? You could be playing ESO, you could be playing literally anything and all those backlogs you complain about, or you could be getting some sleep, which is something you need more in your old age. Why the hell are you talking about the freaking pandemic again? I don't know, but there's this cute little emoji from YouTube with these blue guys, and I think it's kind of hilarious. So any excuse to spam those in my own chat, because it's just me and the Stream Elements bot and whoever decides to stop by at this wild time of night for my time zones. Out on the West Coast, it's after midnight, so I don't know. It's just like, this is probably going to be another one of those streams where people catch it largely after the fact. I used to complain about that as the VCR effect, but that was in a Twitch environment. YouTube, completely different story. YouTube treats streams like videos. Doesn't really know what to do with stream replays just yet, and there isn't the culture yet with streaming where you want to watch streams after the fact. But one of the reasons why I do this is because in the world of podcasting and radio, there are things like on-demand archives for old shows and stuff. And if you don't catch a show live, you listen to the podcast. And so it would not be unprecedented for streamers to get their stuff together and create content in the form of something worth listening to after the fact. One of the things you got to watch out for in the multimedia meta is streamer exceptionalism. This idea that streamers are anything special whatsoever. There is no precedent, or even content creators in general with YouTube and stuff. There's this idea floating around out there that this internet stuff is something special and it's not precedented. Well, only the internet part of that is unprecedented. There's a lot of things you can draw inspiration from in the offline world. A great example of that would be thumbnails on YouTube. All this talk about you gotta have clickbait in your thumbnails. Do I? We've had something resembling thumbnails for years in the form of cover art for movies and movie posters and stuff like that. Now, there are misdirect trailers to get audiences worked up about an upcoming movie, but does this look like clickbait to you? Imagine if this 007 movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, had a clickbait title similar to today's internet videos. What do you think that would look like? Either way, what is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay. It's too late for me to really do any of the gaming type stuff that I've been doing, but some other stuff has been piling up, most notably related to the progression of the COVID pandemic, as New England is finally seeing some numbers drop to the point where some people in certain parts of Connecticut can consider, even if they follow the old pre-political 2021 guidance, numbers in one part of Connecticut are finally dropping to the point where people can consider not masking. Right in time for the Tridemic, as it's being called. So, because of all the stuff we've been doing to fight COVID, as well as viral interference, flu and RSV, the timetables got disrupted. So there's a lot of people getting that stuff in this no mitigation holiday season for the first time. You know, remember everything went all screwy earlier in the year with the green map and stuff like that from the CDC. But this is going to be our first holiday season with a lack of mitigation similar to previous years. Now, you could have had some deep reds out there. You could have some deep reds that basically minimized the pandemic and did everything they could to kick against the bricks at literally everything that we've done in order to try and fight the virus. They could have been doing it since 2020. And you probably, you know, and I know that people were doing this. They're having family get-togethers with no mitigations, no masking, no nothing. And in the case of even my step relatives, there were a bunch of people that got COVID at those get-togethers. And so some of them even got the nastier, earlier variants that attacked deeper in your lungs. So, yeah. Merry Christmas, the ultimate crappy Christmas present. And I thought lottery tickets were bad. Here's a scratch ticket for Christmas. Merry Christmas. It's a crappy gift, or maybe it's not. Isn't that how the joke usually goes? Hey, before we get into the discussion, me just talk about this whole situation with testing the internet. I'm streaming this at 4,500 average bit rate. OBS is jumping it up a little bit higher, though, than what I dialed in. But considering how smooth things were last time, and considering I'm using a webcam as well as still images for most of the video with this, I think, you know, the way the chat streams have been going, I probably can just get away with 4,500. If I do what YouTube says I should do, let me go to my settings here. If I do that, if I went with the recommended settings, the YouTube OBS recommended settings say I should stream at 10,000, which I just punched in. So now everything's going to become super unstable, and I might start lagging and dropping frames all over the place. 30 FPS. I'm waiting for YouTube to start complaining about me. So complaining to me so I can let you folks know why I picked 4,500 as a bit rate. Looks like it's handling it quite nicely, though. But it's going to take like a minute or two of streaming at this ridiculous bit rate for 1080/30 before YouTube starts complaining at me. I'm just waiting for the message to pop up. The reason why I picked 4,500, and this is kind of a sanity check for me when it comes to streaming, the reason why I picked 4,500 is because that's usually what YouTube recommends for 30 FPS. If I had more bandwidth, I'd get a recommended number for 60 FPS too, but I think the official maximum is $9,000. So we can figure out the game streams later. Although I do have similar bottlenecks to figure out. If I had any money at all, which I just got another medical bill from all the crap that's going on this year, so I'm out another $500,000. So with everything that's going on with losing a paycheck to COVID, still chasing money from the state and other folks for that, and the state and the disability program, I got to see if that might be an option. I might call HR about that. There's got to be something where it's not the worst thing in the world if you get COVID. Okay, YouTube, I'm streaming at 10 grand at only 30 frames per second. When are you going to start complaining to me about how I'm being a total bandwidth hog? It used to be quicker than this too. So, come on, where's the big yellow box? I'm watching Live Control Room over here. I'll put it... Oh, it's not a yellow box anymore. Oh, okay. The stream's current bitrate, 10,198 kilobits per second, is higher than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that you use a stream bitrate of 4,500 kilobits per second, which for a 30 FPS chat stream is not too much to ask. So let's dial it back down to 4,500, get back to normal, and see if watch the bandwidth drop down and all that lovely stuff. And hey, you know, if we really want to, let's just have some more fun with that, whatever this blue guy is, my new favorite emoji in YouTube streaming. So yeah, people say those YouTube runny nose. Maybe I spent too much time out in the cold tonight with the stuff at the 9 to 5, or hey, maybe I've got one of the other things going around after having COVID a couple of weeks ago. Christmas, bah humbug. Either way, so that's the important thing to remember. We can actually get back to the discussion now that I have my 4,500 dialed in for my 30 FPS chat stream profile, as Dan shows up with the blue guy. What are these other emojis that they added in? There's this sad face thing here. There's this crying face. And then there's this green Frankenstein laughing face. But my favorite is the blue guy. You know what? The blue guy you know what the blue guy reminds me of? Although he's the wrong color? Number Munchers. If you ever played Number Munchers on an Apple II at school as a kid, that's kind of what he reminds me of. Like, and maybe the other ones are the Troggles or something. I am telling you right now, all those mech programs. Hey, there's the service repair monkey when YouTube 404s. But it's those old mech games like Oregon Trail, Odell Lake, Think Quick, I think was one of them, Number Munchers, Math Blaster. I'll bet any money those old goofball computer games that you used to play in school is probably a reason why a lot of people my age have an Apple II emulator or something. It's like, just emulate a 2E and then fire up Number Munchers or Think Quick or something. And remember, back in the day when you were at school, you couldn't play Nintendo, but there were things on Apple IIs that looked kind of like video games that were a form of edutainment that you'd want to play because it was better than doing work on pencil and paper. I mean, if you're like a 7 or 8 year old like I was at the time, what would you rather work on? Long division or playing number munchers? Like, no, seriously, teacher, this pseudo-educational video game can actually teach me stuff. We don't have to do work the real way. Put me on the computer all day. You know, I'll be an expert by the time I hit 6th grade at what it's like to die of dysentery. Pulled a muscle. Getting old sucks. You want to know what being old feels like? Being old is when you're hurting and you're cussing a blue streak because you're like, how the hell did I just hurt that? Anyways, got the freaking aspirins. So now that I am going to have some sore chest muscles from too much laughter and a few things at work, bada bing. I got that stuff left over from COVID. So basically one of the things I'm trying to do is take less of this because this is a risk to your liver. So for any acute stuff, like something that happens, try and use up these aspirins. Because the last aspirins that I had, they sat in the medicine cabinet so long, they expired. And I was like, well, it's probably just a little less potent because it's expired. They turned yellow. Think like when your electronics yellow after a couple of years, except it was aspirin. I was like, okay, time to throw those things out. And plus, I got the less tangy drink. I've got the strawberry watermelon stuff, which once upon a time I thought the sugarless drink with strawberry watermelon tasted like Benadryl, but now it just tastes like what it's supposed to taste like, maybe because I've gotten used to it. I like having stuff that's not too tangy so I can drink it straight and not have to water it down. I think a lot of these drink mixes are rigged, kind of like, you know how if you like grew up in a poor family, mom would buy less stuff by like when you got half out of shampoo, fill it back up with water. So, and then you'd use it up, and then they'd buy another one. I think the same thing's true with drink mixes. They're made to be a little bit too strong by default. So you want to, yeah, my letter opener, my medieval nerd letter opener here. Nerd. Yep. But at least it's full tang and it won't break like the other one. It's great, bro. Best letter opener I've ever had. Hey, opens the whole envelope like that. Yeah, so what was I talking about? Let me just DVR mode. Like that. Is they're made to be a little bit too strong by default, so you want to, yeah, my letter. Yeah, made to be a little stronger by default, so that way you can water them down. So I like the root beer drink mix. So I remember when the folks would make Kool-Aid. I don't have a soda stream, if that's what you're thinking. I broke live control room. Oh boy, reload. Stop breaking stuff. Come on, load. There we go. Yeah. The most, let's put another 5 blue guys on the screen just for the heck of it. Zing. Yeah, it's just crazy when you're streaming and live control room bugs out and then you reload it and it says connect your streaming software to go live when it never disconnected you in the first place. So yeah, I got a feeling some of those drink mixes, I think some of the drink mixes are actually designed so that you take 2 pitchers, you make one, then you pour half of it into the other and fill them both with water, and it's not as strong. It's in the packets at the dollar store. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't do Soda Stream or anything like that, but yeah. Imagine these people want to hear me rant about the pandemic, and we're talking about sugarless drink mix. But hey, it's, you know, it's water. It's a way to get me to drink something based on water and stuff like that. I suppose we should probably also mention, why the heck did I buzz myself down to a summer haircut? I wanted to wear a Joe Cat today, but decided not to. But now it's like 20 degrees out. But at least I can wear the big winter hats and stuff without it going poof on me when I take the thing off. Because one of the reasons why I keep my hair short is that by default, if I let it grow to like a normal person's length, it gets unruly rather quickly, as I found out when I was a kid and a teenager. So, I don't want to be spending all day combing my hair, so I keep it so short that some people might be like bald or something, and they're jealous. But it's like, yeah. It's I don't know. Anyways, enough talking about that stuff. So where are we at with all of this? Why am I doing a Pandemi-Rant? Well, number one, it's too late to really do anything else. There's stuff that's been piling up with the whole pandemic stuff, and I've got some updates on my own recovery from COVID, as well as what's going on with the 9-to-5ers, some other stuff. And I can't remember if I brought these up in the whole Vanks Vovid discussion, so if I get redundant, oh well. But there's talk right now about the Tridemic of what's going on. You have COVID, the flu, and RSV. Interestingly enough, even though I'm kind of typecast as a paranoid guy who won't let the pandemic go when it comes to COVID, and I'm the last person at the 9-to-5 that's still masking and on a regular basis, and stuff along those lines, despite people typecasting me as a hypochondriac for still taking COVID seriously and even supporting China with their zero COVID policies to an extent, I'm actually curious how well China would do if they ever decided to authorize our mRNA and then vaccinated their vulnerable people with that technology. Because one of the big reasons why Western vaccines have worked so well is this new technology that has become very available and very flexible, and it's easy to manufacture versus old-fashioned vaccines where you had to have like dead virus or something else in an adjuvant and stuff along those lines. But there's still some older technologies available. The Janssen, aka Johnson & Johnson vaccine, was viral vector. Same as Russia's Sputnik vaccine, by the way. And a Novavax, a lot of people talking about that. That's protein subunits. They basically they find it. They have like a synthetic spike protein thing and adjuvant to make it beefier, and then that is what trains your immune system and stuff. But I just want to deal with some disinformation right now about some of the crap people say, the anti-vaxxers say that, oh, I don't need this shot. I'm going to boost my immune system through all these other ways. The point of vaccines, any kind of vaccines, is to boost your immune system by training it in advance so it can handle the real deal when the real deal shows up. Another very important thing we got to think about in regard to recent news, especially with all this crap people are saying about immunity debt, not a thing, by the way. The term wasn't even used until 2021. It's not that there's some kind of debt or people have killed their immune system or whatnot because of all the masking and stuff of the past 2 years. Our immune system is always getting a workout from something. There's a video that went around on Twitter being like, look at how gross hand dryers are in restrooms. They take like Petri dishes to like those air dryers in restaurants and stuff, and they grow all kinds of crap in them because nobody ever cleans them. Because half the point of those hand dryers is to not use paper towels, so people do a set it and forget it with those, and who knows or who cares what those things are blowing out. But that's a source of stuff that you're drying your hands, you're getting exposed to that stuff. That's something for your immune system to deal with. And then there's the bacteria in your food. Yeah, your food contains bacteria, and so do you, by the way. All over you. There's bacteria all over you. Your skin, there's bacteria in your gut, there's bacteria in your large intestine. I mean, you've got your own microorganism ecosystem going just from day to day. That's why there's things like probiotics and yogurt and stuff like that to give you better gut health or, better colon health or whatever. It's like, it's all technically part of your digestive system. But if you've ever seen Mythbusters, you'll know that they myth-busted the 5-second rule and double dipping chips in salsa. When they actually ran the tests, they found out that there is more bacteria in the salsa by default, just as a result of it being food, than you'll get if you drop a chip on the floor for 10 seconds or someone double dips. So there's already bacteria in the salsa to begin with, just as a result of what it is, which is one reason why food goes bad, is when, that stuff does its thing and you don't eat it quickly enough and it gets broken down by the bacteria. But, salsa chip salsa and stuff like that already has bacteria in it by virtue of what it is. Stuff like that. Your bread will get moldy because of stuff that gets into your bread. Other stuff will go bad because of stuff that gets into that. I mean, our world is full of stuff our immune system has to fight and contend with and figure out what to do about. So it's not the case that and here's the funniest thing with the people that hate masks. Ew, masks can have bacteria and stuff. Then 2 years later, the masks are the reason why your immune system isn't up to snuff, because you didn't get infected with flu and stuff for 2 years. Okay. The masks are allegedly a source of bacteria from you constantly breathing into it and stuff like that, and you're sucking it in. But you have an immune system problem because you were wearing a mask during the lockdowns and stuff. Which is it? Come on. That's the problem with this entire side of this whole mess. They don't use their heads at all. They expect you to just parrot what some conspiracy theorist tells you. The con of a lot of this crap, including conspiracy theorists, by the way. I was just watching an old Alex Jones movie last night, 9/11, The Road to Tyranny. I used to take that seriously 20 years ago when I was fresh out of college. I was like, I'm open-minded enough to listen to conspiracy theorists and get their side of the story. Well, and then, of course, I learned about psychological tricks where you do like with Tucker Carlson, where he starts with a fact and then veers off into his own conjecture, hoping that you're not going to notice that, and you'll just go along. And so you get very quietly shepherded away from the facts into somebody's opinions because they do a little sleight of hand and hope that you don't notice it. Very common trick. But the common trick of hysteria artists, and I dealt with this in the churches I was growing up in and all this crap, they want to jack your emotions so much you turn your brain off. And they want to pull on your heartstrings until you stop thinking about things, until you don't think straight, until you can more easily be manipulated by their crap. That's the name of the game. Anyways, what do we got here? It sounds confusing idea by them, but that's the con. That's the long con of it. Jack your emotions until you're not using your brain anymore. Until you're focusing on the way somebody says something rather than what they're saying. Because the minute you focus on what they're saying and you do some homework on the matter, you find out it's crap. Preachers do this too in certain churches. You pay attention to some of these people and the way they react to a sermon they consider good. Do they consider it good because of the ideas actually being discussed? Or do they consider it good because of the way the preacher is talking? Very, very important. Because in certain traditions, you can hyperventilate like this. Yes. And if you throw in enough glories and hallelujahs, glory to God, the preacher's gonna sound anointed. And they probably guzzle throat lozenges Monday through Saturday so they can actually have a vocal cord left in their throat by the time they turn 40. And that's what I grew up with, though. Nobody could just let the ideas stand on their own. It always had to be hyped up. There always had to be hysteria. And then that translated into a generation of disinformation spreading hotheads on the internet that have to put all caps on everything, that have to put exclamation points on everything. And they just want to browbeat you with their keyboards into going along with them, and then they call you a sheep if you don't, as if you're not a sheep when you're not thinking for yourself and you're going along with whatever the disinformation is. Ridiculous. Anyways, now that I've done a number on my voice trying to impersonate a preacher, let's move on to the actual topic. The idea of the Tridemic is this whole thing where it's not just about COVID anymore. It's about COVID, flu, and RSV. Now, we went off on that tangent because as much as people are typecasting me as a hypochondriac for still taking COVID seriously, and I might even support China to an extent on their zero COVID because I actually still believe in fighting the virus, I think China, though, is a much bigger version of New Zealand. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, or however you say her name, was ordering lockdowns long after the vaccines were going all around the world. I consider that to be wrong. She should have been aggressive in chasing down vaccines and getting the vaccines into the equation in New Zealand, not acting like it's 2020 in late 2021. So a lot of the West has focused on living with the virus because the vaccines are as good as they are. The truth of the matter is, though, just because we came out with an awesome vaccine doesn't mean that we can't have plentiful, easy-to-access masks and testing for the people that want to use them. And we also shouldn't leave the immunocompromised stuck in their homes in the dust because of that crap. Yeah, and it doesn't just mean somebody with some screwball condition you never heard of. You could be someone who receives an organ transplant or gets cancer, and now you're in this group that has to be extra careful. So, is it really fair that something beyond your control, like you getting cancer or you needing an organ transplant, puts you into this higher risk group, and now you have to be more concerned about COVID because some red hat nut job doesn't want to wear a mask at Walmart? If you had a goat, what would you name it? I don't know. I'm more of a cat person. Unfortunately, my landlords don't allow pets. So I'm just stuck looking at cat pictures and videos on the internet and being like, oh, that one's cute. I wouldn't want a cat in here anyways. With my usual non-luck, the cat would probably scratch at the hoses that send the gas into the furnace and cause a gas leak, and now I gotta have the landlord, the fire department, don't turn on any lights or the house might explode. Nah, I'll just keep looking at cat pictures on the internet, seeing people's cute videos on Twitter and TikTok, and what's the other one called? The Pet Collective, and other sorts of things like that over on Twitch, I think is live stream stuff. I think there's a channel. I think there's actually a channel in my smart TV for the Pet Collective. But yeah, it's funny though, as much as people are saying I'm paranoid about COVID, they're being super paranoid about RSV. Something that basically mostly affects the elderly and babies, not necessarily people in the middle like myself. So, like, oh, I got a friend in an RSV. You got to watch out for RSV. I'm like, well, congratulations. Welcome to my world. There's some respiratory doodad going around that you're paranoid about. But has your respiratory boogeyman killed 1 million Americans? That's the thing. And maimed and disabled countless others. I don't know. I gotta wonder about people sometimes. Then again, if I spend too much time wondering about people, I'm never gonna get to live my life. I'm gonna be paranoid about other people way too much. I might as well just take precautions and just hope for the best. And isn't that kind of what we're all doing with this garbage anyways? All right, let's take a look at some of the maps with regards to this. I might turn on dark mode. Does dark mode process on the CDC's website? I can't get this out of light mode, which is why I'm lit up like the 4th of July. Switch up to browser mode. Link that sucker up to Chrome. And let's take a look at the community transmission map here. Community transmission, the old reliable, the older of the two maps. There's a couple of things been going on. So we have various chunks of the country with moderate transmission, which if you remember the old guidance... If you remember the old guidance from before the Democrats were worrying about the election, moderate or low is when you could take your mask off. That's what I still follow to this day. So if more of Connecticut turns yellow, I might be in a better position to take the masks off and stop being that weirdo that's still masking. Although maybe I could whoops. I should probably use the zoom tools that are available on the map instead of trying to cheeseball it by holding control and doing the other stuff here. So let's take a look at let's take a look at New England here. Hey, Michigan, how you doing? Bit of New York, a bit of Maine, bit of moderate stuff in northern New England here and there. Connecticut, though, finally has, for the first time since the end of the Omicron surge, as in BA1, one county that is moderate transmission. Unfortunately, that county is right next to southern Rhode Island, which sucks. And northern Rhode Island, which sucks a little less. And most of southern New England has been substantial transmission. So I really don't know what to make of this. Is this going to go? Which direction is this going to go in? I think it's going to go in the other direction, unfortunately, because of whatever's going on in Rhode Island and whatever is coming out in New York City. We know all the international travel lights up the I-95 corridor first. You have Mystic Seaport, the Groton subbase, where a lot of people work close to each other, and a lot of Republicans work there. And then also you have the casinos in New London County. Tolland County is horse farms, but they have a little bit of activity on I-84. Hartford County has the state capital. Litchfield County, I don't know what the deal is with them. New Haven County, it often has lots of crap going on. They have Yale New Haven Hospital out there. And Fairfield County is rich people that commute to New York. So it's a mixed bag here in New England when it comes to community transmission. For my relatives in Florida, though, it's a mixed bag as well. Depending on what part of Florida they live in, they might have moderate transmission or substantial high transmission, or it could be that Ron DeSantis is being a douche muffin with the way things are reported in Florida. But probably the wildest wild card that I never would have guessed in the United States when it comes to community transmission is Arizona. And to a little lesser extent, New Mexico. They have one substantial county there. Why is it that Arizona is COVID central in the United States for community transmission? Arizona, Puerto Rico island is an island, of course, but why is it that Arizona, out of all the states, is COVID central? Are there jokes out there about calling it like the Kerry Lake flu or something? Arizona doesn't make any sense. There's international stuff in California, Washington. There's New York City, which is a constant problem. Most populated urban area in the United States, 8 million residents. And then there's Boston that stuff can come in through, which has an international airport. There's also an airport in Providence, Rhode Island. There's Hartford. There's also Florida with the cruise industry. But Arizona has the most consistent high community transmission out of the entire lower 48. Why? It's just, why? I literally have no clue about this one. But yeah, so it's interesting. What's this postcode? There's some new things that have been popped up in the CDC's thingamabob here. So let's take a look at them too. Also some very important numbers when it comes to this other stuff. So to sum up what's going on with this community transmission stuff here, it's important to realize that we live in a day and age right now of stealth transmission, something I thought would only exist in a spy movie, like I noted in the description. You have people that have been kicking against the bricks when it comes to literally everything we've done to fight this virus that are now going to pretend it's something else. Now, the 9-to-5ers, one of the biggest smoking guns, I don't know if I mentioned this in the Vanks Vovid discussion earlier. One of the biggest smoking guns that let me know that I caught this thing at work is that the custodian got it around the same time. Now, she was unvaccinated, so she got hit a lot harder by it. Had like days where, she couldn't get out of bed, just got pummeled by it, but she survived. Don't know if she'll have any long COVID or anything of that stuff, but she wasn't an anti-vaxxer though. She was vaccine hesitant. So she was kind of like, whoa, when I told her that despite my risk factors, I only had one bad day. Now, an update on my own recovery from the COVID nonsense about a month ago. I was zipping around. I'm zipping around like I was I'm back to zipping around, not getting out of breath or winded or anything. No brain fog. Never had any oxygen problems. And as worked up as I am, being as bombastic as I am right now, 73 beats per minute. Now, it used to be the case. I'm actually going to we're actually going to can the camera for a bit here. Let's black out the camera here so I can stand up. Unless you want to see my fat gut. I'm actually standing up now, and it's going to be hard to keep the microphone nearby. Standing up before I went back to work got me up to 100 beats per minute. That's how out of shape I was. Let's give it a few more seconds. 95, and then it drops down. Then it drops down after I've been standing for a while. All right. All right. Enough of this bowing to the power of the dark side here. Do we have to reset the camera? Did that just come back on with default settings? I don't think so. Yeah, it's still got manual focus, and it's still set to very warm white balance because I don't have a real light setup. But, yeah. It used to be the case the tiniest thing I did would wind me before I went back to work. Now I'm feeling a lot more normal, zipping around, and I'm sure that the people with worse COVID stories than I have probably observed me zipping around even when wearing a mask. Even when I'm wearing an upgraded mask setup with a KF94 with my old cloth masks on top of it to hold it up against my head, to bolt it to my head a little better, so to speak. But I'm still very much the total pandemic ninja when it comes to my mask setup. It's a beefier one, too. So you have all of that going on, and we've had more technical issues with the machine, but I'm zipping around, running up and down the stairs, barreling along on the forklift, picking items while the machine is stopped. I've probably been in much better shape this week than I have been in a long time. Yeah, let's just see if this thing can get a signal here, because I'm just moving around way too much for it to pick up a pulse. Well, look at that readout on this oximeter. Yeah. These LPOWs are actually pretty good. 70 beats a minute, as worked up as I am. No oxygen issues, never had any. Had a grand total of 1 day with worse symptoms than the colds that I've gotten over the years with low-grade fevers and stuff. So just that Sunday with the fever that I was fighting and eventually tag teaming with multiple medications to knock down the fever back into low-grade fever territory and stuff like that. And then I just had to get back into shape once I got going again. So it's been very, very noticeable, especially to the people that are vaccine hesitant, that didn't get their booster shot, that didn't get booster shots properly, or even the anti-vaxxers who now get to sit there and seethe very, very jealously as they see me talk about only having one bad day and then coming back to work. So, yeah, I mean, the Saturday Night Live skit about COVID was largely very tasteless satire. But I can laugh at it now. Because Now, Dr. Jha actually is talking about, oh yeah, the United States is ready to move beyond COVID, but only if people stay current on their vaccines. So let me go back to, let's go check out some of the other CDC goodies here. Take a look at genomic surveillance for the variant proportions for the United States, as well as, dark mode's kicking. Let's turn that off. Let me see if I can get this to display normally. Stuff like that. HHS region USA. Oh, they changed the colors on this. Or is it because did they change the colors on this? I mean, this updates once a week, so. Oh, it's because I'm looking at I'm looking at some other things. Let me just see here. National and regional variant proportions. That's the big thing I'm looking at. They changed the color. That looks like they changed the colors on there, and it's they got this aqua thing going on because of all the stuff that they're tracking now. So the colors have completely changed. Let me link this up. Yeah, the colors have changed. They got different colors now. What is it with the CDC and the color green? Link back to browser mode. So here is the genomic surveillance for all the variants. So if I can stop mousing over everything. BA5 is in decline, finally. It was a virus it was a variant whose tropism was similar to that of the Delta variant, but it didn't turn out to be as severe as Delta, although BA.5 was the flagship for the longest time. BA.4/6, the successor to BA.4, is going away. XBB and some of the stuff that came over from Asia is now on here. The numbers, they're being tracked in terms of how big they are. Also, that's another reason why BA.5 is losing numbers, because some of the stuff from overseas was counted under BA.5 until it attained critical mass in the United States. But the dominant variants right now are the BQs. Part of the problem with the BQs is that they resist stuff like monoclonal antibodies. Matter of fact, the FDA just pulled authorization for, how do you say that? Bebtelovimab or something? One of the monoclonals has been knocked out of the race in terms of fighting COVID. And I expect the Molnupiravir or whatever that was, the Merck Thor pill, probably going to end up being challenged because of issues versus Paxlovid for therapeutics. But there's a monoclonal antibody that's now out of contention because it's not effective against these newer variants, particularly the BQs. BF7 is another one to keep an eye on because it's known for causing chest pain. So you go to the ER because you think you're having a heart attack and you only have COVID. So that wouldn't be good. And the BQs basically rule the roost. Let's go over to HHS Region 1 New England, the Northeast, where I'm from. And it's not all that different. The BQs rule the roost, a little less BA.4/6, BA.5's in decline, BF7 has a decent following. And I think we have the most progression of the XBB variant, which went all around Singapore, although it didn't drive hospitalizations up. I'm concerned about the X variants, though, because the X variants, all the variants that start with X, have a certain mutation that put it at big risk of becoming like a Deltacron and becoming more severe, which would take things back, which would take us back to worrying about whether you could breathe and stuff like that, because it would go deeper into your lungs. So I'm very concerned about the evolution of a more severe variant coming out of the X line. XBB's not that, but I'm worried about I'd be worried about its successors, though. So either way, the BQs rule the roost. I'm guessing that's probably what I had when I got it about a month ago or so. And let's take a look at some of the other toys that the CDC has in the toy box. How about wastewater surveillance? Check the wastewater map, as I was talking to the custodian about, because she is uniquely vulnerable. She is uniquely vulnerable. It doesn't look like there's surges in New England, but definitely in New York City with wastewater data. The more red your wastewater dot is, the more there's increases in the amount of COVID showing up in the sewage, because, yeah, it's literally crappy science. It is literally crappy science, but people shed the virus when they use the bathroom before they're symptomatic, if they get symptomatic. So wastewater data is a good thing to keep an eye on, although there's a dearth of data in New York for whatever reason. It looks like things are fine in Connecticut and Massachusetts, but New York City has a little something going on. Ohio and the Midwest has something going on. How about Arizona? A couple of red dots here, some red dots in Utah, a little bit of orange in California. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But the question everybody has here is, the question that people have here is basically, what kind of a winter surge are we going to be looking at? Is there going to be one? My prediction is that we don't have something like a surge. There is no successor to Omicron that throws everybody into the hospital. But the current alphabet soup of variants going around puts a dent in our ability to get back to normal. And if you get it, it sucks, and you feel like an unlucky bastard when you're stuck isolating for a week and losing paychecks from it and having to chase money. Connecticut has a paid sick leave program, but they say that if you just get COVID, unless it incapacitates you completely, you're not eligible. So you're basically wondering if your company has a disability program that can get you some money when you're stuck out of work for a week with COVID. But as I heard from our own HR, first the state has to reject you before HR can intervene. And in the case of the state of Connecticut, so many people are going for the paid leave that processing times are delayed by weeks. I won't know if I'm eligible for any money for that week I missed due to having to isolate with COVID, probably until January 2023. So, yeah. I probably won't know if I can even get any. So that's a paycheck, as far as I'm concerned, that's next to nothing. I don't even know if the scrappy amount of sick time and PTO I had will even do very much except cover the cost of my benefits. And if I end up owing money to the company, they'll send me a bill. And I'm going to receive a bill for that week of my... Actually, no, I'm receiving a bill directly for the benefits because of the leave that I was on. So I'm going to have to pay a week of insurance premiums sometime probably later this month. So more bills right in time for Christmas. Gee, isn't getting COVID fun? This is one of the reasons why I consider the Saturday Night Live skit to be completely tasteless. Is because... if you work a salaried corporate job where you got your paycheck no matter what when you're stuck home for 10 days, being paid for 10 days to never leave a blanket as a white-collar worker, that's cool. If you're hourly, forget it. It sucks. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, it might screw up your entire month. And through something you don't control or can't control. Because bappada running their mouth at the Walmart doesn't want to wear masks anymore or pretends that it's just a cold. That's all I have is a cold. Did you test to make sure it's COVID? No, don't force me to test, you government lackey. Big government kiss ass. I'm not testing. And you find out the hard way it wasn't just a cold. You big government statist, you. I don't know. I'm a little outdated with my libertarian insults. Sucks. There is one more set of data that is just... All right. There is one more sobering set of data that I'm keeping an eye on. And maybe the CDC is going to change the numbers with this too. Well, let's just go all the way back to 2021 with this stuff. And we can change this one has slider bars, the whole 9 yards. What about the vaccine? What about the vaccine? Did your vaccine not work because you got sick? No, I have the best COVID story out of anybody. As I predicted, it was mostly a money problem, losing a paycheck that week. Now, unless there's some complication that I'm about to get my ass kicked by, or if I die of cardiac arrest or something like that. But... yeah, that what's her face who was 49 years old that had COVID 2 months ago and just randomly died a couple of weeks ago. Turned out her surviving relatives, after seeing people speculating on the internet, turned around and said that she was dealing with an arrhythmia. So she already had some kind of condition that left her prone to a cardiac arrest. It's interesting, there's actually an anti-vaxxer documentary that just came out about people dying suddenly. And that's the way it goes on the internet now. There's people out there that the minute someone dies unexpectedly, as it's gonna get put in the news release, there's gonna be a group of people like, were they vaccinated? And then there's going to be a group of people like, when did they last have COVID? And so, if you're on my side of this, you think the virus does more damage than the rare side effects of the vaccine. Also, mRNA doesn't do anything with your DNA, but the virus does. So that's why the concern is about complications after the fact. Kind of like with Lyme disease. You can get over Lyme disease, but end up with complications depending on where those drill-shaped bacteria go in your system. It's why there's an entire group of people that call their leftover symptoms chronic Lyme, when in reality it's called post-Lyme. The medical professionals refer to it as post-Lyme for complications after a Lyme disease infection. But COVID's not the only thing you can get that might have some lingering after effects afterwards. Any of us who've been following this stuff and all the things people get paranoid about probably already knew this. Anyways, so what about the vaccines? Yeah, well, the vaccines, especially mRNA, have been great for the West. It's one of the reasons why we're able to even talk about living with the virus as opposed to what China's doing. Because the homegrown Chinese vaccines, their own corporate leaders of companies like Sinovac and whatnot actually came out and admitted they weren't as good. And if you look at the vaccination profile over there, they weren't as good at vaccinating their more vulnerable populations like the elderly. So it becomes a toss-up here, especially with the national pride of Xi Jinping and his administration. Why, oh yeah, China, whoop, 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 that kind of crap. So in the name of nationalism, are these people accepting a crappier deal with COVID to the point where they have to keep the zero COVID stuff going? Because if they stop it, considering what happened with Taiwan, where there was loads of cases and hospitalization, so COVID went nuts playing catch up with Taiwan when they exited zero COVID. Yeah. What would it look like in a country with over 1 billion people? Most populous country on the face of the earth. New York City times whatever. And what would it do to the supply chains? What would it do to all that stuff we buy that's made in China? One of the contributors to inflation, might as well call it COVIDflation. Supply chain hiccups due to the virus. The virus. So what happens? I don't know. The CCP definitely has a real kerfuffle on its hands. But here in the West, here in America, this was Omicron. This big hill over here is Omicron. Delta is kind of around here somewhere. Then the waves of 2022 are like this, but the graph is kind of thrown off by Omicron. Set it to like April 2022, and then we see this. Pandemic of the unvaccinated. That was a derogatory term. Is it? They did fill up the hospitals. They are getting their ass kicked harder. And I've even run into some anecdotal examples of that, with a vaccine hesitant person being out for longer with more bad days than I did staying up to date with the bivalent booster. But then you have the wackos in the internet that dogpiled Walensky. Look, she got infected a month after the bivalent booster, and she was out for 3 weeks. Jumping on that detail instead of it being mild. Or in my case, people that are yapping behind my back about how I got the bivalent booster in September and then caught the thing in November, probably from work. From someone who is asymptomatic or was pretending it was just a cold. Because we have people that will downplay and Tylenol their way out of admitting they have COVID and try to work sick, as predicted. We've got some people that are malignant narcissists who won't want to go through the rigmarole of the leave of absence process when they get infected. They'll just pretend they don't have it, and they'll have more money than those of us who do the right thing. Sad. But the numbers say, and this is deaths. This is people dying as a factor of every 100,000 residents. Look how small the green line is for the bivalents. Just go to cases. Here's our cases. So I'm one of the rarities. Lovely. Let's take a look at everything going back to October before the Omicron wave. There you go. There you go. Just bump it back to this. Pandemic of the unvaccinated? Yes. This is cases now, not just deaths. As in the wild, you know what the wild card is here? This is per 100,000 residents. These rates are incidents per 100,000 population. But in the Northeast, I wonder if I can limit this to just the Northeast. I don't think I can. In the Northeast, the majority of the population's in the country, majority of the population has at least one dose. 75 to 80%, at least one dose. So the true blue unvaccinated, number one, fringe. Number two, a smaller and smaller group of people, and yet they're getting their asses kicked more than the rest of us. There you go. And I think there's something in play that we really seriously need to take a look at with these numbers. And that is this. Remember the difference between an individual's approach to the pandemic and the government's approach to the pandemic. As an individual, you care about not dying, not getting disabled with long COVID, and not losing a ton of money from the paychecks you lose from getting booted out of work to isolate. The government, however, their primary focus is keeping the hospitals from getting overrun, as was the case during the Delta and Omicron surges. So the government's going to care more if there's a threat to the hospitals than whether or not it's a good environment for you to get sick or not get sick. This is the con of the anti-vaxxers, the COVID minimizers, and the people that I call pro-virus, because they have fought against every attempt to fight this thing and continue to do so to this day. These are the people that I do not associate with unless I'm forced to, like at work, or some idiot with no mask in Walmart who's coughing. It's just a cold. That crap. Tempted to get one of those CO2 monitors and see how many parts per million there are. How terrible the ventilation is. And if Vinay Prasad posts enough more lunacy on Twitter, I may just build a Corsi Rosenthal box just to be an asshole to him. Sorry, I really don't care if I get demonetized because of this crap. I've gotten demonetized because of talking about COVID numerous times. Even though I'm pro-vaccine, pro-doing everything right, and anti-misinformation. So yeah, who's getting their asses kicked? Yeah. Who's getting their asses kicked by this thing? So, you have this giant surge with Omicron. You have other surges depending on where you live with Delta. The government's going to care here. But when it's a steady flow of people to the hospital, we get what we get with the CDC nowadays. And probably the biggest smoking gun, the green map. Get off of Connecticut on COVID Act now, a.k.a. COVID Act nerfed. The green map is based on the community levels from the CDC. What was the issue with the community levels? They don't as much look at how much virus is going around and how prone you are to getting it as they do the threat to the hospitals. If the hospitals are threatened, then the government cares, and their maps reflect it. And there's a vaccine thing. One county in Connecticut. Woo! Otherwise, the rest of southern New England is very highly vaccinated with at least one dose. There's parts of the country, though, like Georgia, Nebraska, parts of Texas, where it's much more, of a patchwork, even in New York. You know, I don't know why New York has the problems they have. More of a patchwork of vaccine coverage, which is a prior immunity from that kind of stuff. But yeah, the government is keeping an eye on the collective side of it with the hospital system. It's not about you and whether or not you lose multiple paychecks and can't pay your rent in a time when gas is more expensive, groceries are more expensive, there's inflation and corporate greed jacking up prices. You got all this stuff going on. There's a threat of a railroad strike right now because the railroad companies, who already affected the development of antitrust law in this country by getting too powerful, we've already had problems with the railroads before, and now they're willing to crash the economy right in time for Christmas because the people that work on the trains want sick time. They want a little bit of work-life balance. That thing the unions involved with the railroad disputes want sick time and the ability to have some work-life balance. Something that corporate America is jumping on their soapbox about. Make your associates happy. Make your associates Happy associates are more productive. So I'm just put another set of those blue guys into the chat just for the heck of it, because it's been a while since I've done that. Work-life balance. Encourage better corporate culture. Foster your workforce's productivity. Something like that. But not the railroads. I don't know. Gotta have this big fight right before Christmas. Spare me the drama. But that's the thing. So, yes, the situation with you as a person and the environment that you have to navigate is different than what the government cares about. The government cares about the hospitals and the healthcare system not collapsing. Not whether or not you're prone to getting infected because of people's behavior around you. And then there's the CDC that hasn't turned the lever back up when places have gone to high community levels, like the parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. There's even a county on Long Island. Dr. Jha talked about masks once. Dr. Fauci at his last White House press thing, he's getting ready to retire, talked about masks. But heaven forbid Rochelle Walensky, director of the CDC, say the M word. Spare me. Where's that thing from Dr. Jha? We should probably close with that. Dr. Jha, CNBC. Let's mute this in case it starts playing some... I already did that. Dr. Jha, CNBC. I posted this over on my Twitter. Here's his mugshot. Cameras always seem to catch him at the worst time for pictures. Like... Why do they always make this poor guy look like he's puckering up or something? Like, bad press pictures of this guy. He has no luck with cameras. Dr. Jha, from the CNBC article, the U.S. is ready to move on from COVID, but only if people keep their immunity up to date. Updated December 1st, 2022 at 10:22 a.m., published on Tuesday, the 29th of November. U.S. is getting closer than ever to finally putting COVID in the rearview mirror, according to Dr. Ashish Jha. As long as Americans ever take one simple action, staying up to date on your vaccines. Been obviously a long 2.5 years for Americans. We understand people want to move on. The good news is people can move on if they keep their immunity up to date. Yeah, it's true, but if you have to, that's kind of true. But the big problem with COVID, and the problem that's going to stick around, especially if you're immunocompromised, rule number 2. The 2 rules of COVID: you don't know who has this thing, it transmits very stealthily, and 2, especially in today's environment, and 2, you don't know what this thing's going to do to you if you get it. And I would like to, in my case, even though I had a really good mild run with it, let me also remind everybody that's 2 months after I got a bivalent booster, which is supposed to be just an annual shot. There's people who are up to date on their shots that got COVID like 8 months after their latest booster, that got their asses kicked by it. And I can tell you, even my mild case kicked my ass in 2 major ways. The worst fever I've ever had, over 103 degrees, and the worst cough I ever had that gave me chest soreness from all the coughing for weeks on end. And it was causing all kinds of problems for me. Fortunately, I took it easy over the Thanksgiving break. This all lined up perfectly. I took it easy over the Thanksgiving break, and this has dropped down over the past couple of days, and I'm finally back to normal, charging around, running the palletizer machine, doing this nerdy stuff at this warehouse, because there's nothing else around here. I'd really love to find some tech opportunities, but that probably means moving, and I kind of like these woods. But thing is, though, the more times you get infected, the higher your risk is for complications. So, okay, this time, yeah, but even this mild bout with it wasn't totally mild. I got my ass kicked fever-wise. I got my ass kicked cough-wise. And the after effects with muscles hurting. I can take a deep breath now without it hurting. I couldn't do that a week ago because I coughed so much, the muscles involved got sore, and if it got worse, I could have broken a rib. That would have been a very serious thing, doctor visit. If you break a rib from too much coughing, you have a shard of hard stuff in your body that can poke out your organs. Bad. Fortunately, it didn't get like that for me. So, vax and relax is not something I agree with. We need easy access to masks and testing. It can't just be about the vaccines. The vaccines are the biggest milestone in our progression from what we had in 2020. But we can't pretend everything else has stopped existing, especially with what's going on right now, just because we have the incredible vaccine. Don't forget, there is enough demand for N95 and high-quality masks that it's easy to get them. People know how to use them. And it's, and then you have situations like right now, there's a lot of flu going around, a lot of RSV going around. So there's other stuff, other crap in the air that you don't want to catch. So if we did masks when we didn't have a vaccine for COVID, well, we're all familiar with it now. It wasn't a political statement then. It's not a political statement now. Just like it's not a political statement to wear a mask if you're doing work in like a dusty attic or something where there's things in the air that you don't want to breathe in. How about dust masks at work so you don't suck down a bunch of dust or other particles in the air? It only got politicized because there were hothead charlatans out there trying to sell books and get clicks on the internet by politicizing it. But mask wearing is nothing bizarre. In Asian countries, it's a custom during flu season because you're not a dumbass that wants to get everybody sick. So you wear a mask so you don't catch something and you don't give something you might have to somebody else. In construction and other things too, if there's crap in the air, you put on a mask. If there's gases in the air and fumes, like if you're painting a car, you put on a respirator. PPE is not a political thing. It's only the people trying to sucker you now that are the problem. And so, with this whole thing with Dr. Jha, yeah, the vaccines are great. They can't be the only thing that matters. We have access to a lot of different things. Masking, making decisions on, there's a bunch of stupids that are going to get themselves sick. I'm not going to that event because people are going to get themselves sick at it. And then there's also the whole situation. And then there's also, of course, ventilation. There's lots of other things we can do. And as a matter of fact, the early defenses against COVID, we're talking about Swiss cheese. If something, think a bunch of slices of Swiss cheese. Maybe something gets through the holes on this piece, it doesn't get through the holes on that piece. So, yeah, we have an incredible bivalent booster. We have a robust vaccination program. But you don't pretend everything else stops existing, especially when there's other crap going around that you don't want to get. Like right now with this Tridemic. And we lag behind other countries, too, in terms of vaccination. Yeah, 75+% at least one dose. But the numbers start dropping off when you start talking about who completed their primary series and who's up to date on boosters. And then there's the disinformation. You don't get boosters, you get old shots from like a year or two ago. You get your ass kicked by COVID. Well, I guess the shots didn't work. Look, the shots didn't work. There you go. But it's your problem because the tools were there, and heck, the government's even still paying for them. This hasn't gone to the private market yet, and you left the tool that you have available on the table. Defeating the triple-demic could play a large role, the article continues. Currently, COVID, the flu, and RSV are spreading to the U.S. Some public health experts have called it a triple-demic. It means getting your COVID and flu shots all that more important. By the way, the flu shot this year is very well matched against what's going around this year, what's going around right now. Doing so can seriously decrease your chances for causing serious illness from the two most concerning of the three viruses. The third, RSV, is mild for most people, though it can be more serious for children and people over 65. So, we think it's incredibly important as we head into the holidays for people to update their immunity to get the new COVID vaccine, get the flu shot. It's a great way to stay safe and healthy this holiday season, Jha added. In other stuff, he'll talk about masking. But masking hasn't gone away. PPE does not have to be a taboo thing just because of some political hacks that want to sucker people. PPE are tools. Use them, indeed. You know, if you're working with power tools, you might be dealing with hard hats and face shields. And the thing with PPE, too, a selling point of PPE, as someone who's dealt with PPE in industrial environments for years, PPE is cheaper than you getting damaged. There's a thing with the warehouse folks. Safety glasses are cheap. Your eyes are priceless. So wear your safety glasses when you're on certain trucks where you have to look up at stuff and something could fall in your eye. Same goes with masks. That's why I upgraded my setup to use KF94s. So the fundamental difference with masking is that cloth masks and surgical masks are better for you not breathing stuff out to others, not so great for stuff coming to you and you breathing it in. That's where the two ways, like the N95s, KF94s, KN95s, make sure they're not counterfeits either. That's where that comes in handy. And then you can go even further with respirators, like flow masks and stuff like that, when you want to block everything out. Like if you're super vulnerable. You know, even gas masky type stuff. Some people do that. They wear respirators instead of masks. Flow mask, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen a couple people on Twitter like, I got a flow mask and I just change filters now instead of throwing away all these disposable masks. That's nice. Less things to worry about. Big rubber thing goes around your nose and mouth. Just change filters. That's cool. But it's a respirator. I've used respirators before. I was an electronics guy in high school, but we had to try all the shops. So I've done some auto body stuff where I had to put on a respirator with the two things on the side and spray paint something. So, yeah, PPE. It's not a political thing. It's a thing that's been involved with doing real work, good old-fashioned hard work for a very, very long time. It's only the hucksters out there suckering people into getting themselves sick and potentially disabled or dead from COVID and its various complications that have turned this into anything that we make this big culture war out of. It's stupid. Excuse me. Stupid. Why am I burping hours after having my midnight supper? But yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to not have loose ends so I don't have to come back to this topic anytime soon. This is going to be yet another Pandemi-Rant where I hope it's the last one. But circumstance has time and again proven that it shouldn't be. Okay, so here's the situation. The custodian got sick around the same time I did, vaccine hesitant, no shots, got hit harder with it, and she was like, whoa, when it came to my story, even though I probably have more risk factors than she did. She's probably more prone to it, though. She's probably more prone because of what she does, because people shed the virus when they use the bathroom, so when she's cleaning the bathrooms, she shouldn't even be wearing a surgical mask. We have plenty of surgical masks sitting around. She should be wearing something two-way, like a respirator. I don't see her wearing anything, no. So she's probably going to get infected again next time we get anybody in the building who has that crap. I just hope that it's not. Well, here's a question I have with reinfection, especially with the alphabet soup of variants going around. So are we in a situation with some of these variants where they've evolved, they're immune evasive, They try to evade immunity from vaccines and prior infection. What about infection with some of the other variants? You get BQ1, you get natural immunity against BQ1, but can BQ11 evade immunity from BQ1? What about XBB? Can XBB evade immunity from BQ1? We know that the BA5 variant evaded immunity from original Omicron, which is before BA2, so about 6 months ago. But is that because of the evolution of the virus, or because it was 6 months ago and the immunity waned? And let's not forget the fundamental weakness of winging it with infection immunity. You have no ability to get a booster shot. There's no equivalent of it. Unless you're like some sad sicko parents are going to be like, immunity debt, oh no, my kids. And they're going to try and get their kids infected on purpose to boost their immunity. All right, I mentioned this on Twitter. I'm going to mention it here. The historical forerunner of what we now know as vaccination was called variolation. It was a way to try and get people immune to smallpox. And the way it worked was they tried to deliberately infect someone with a small dose so it wouldn't go too far. Needless to say, we have vaccines now instead of variolation because variolation sucked. It was superseded by vaccines, including the smallpox vaccine, originally based on cowpox material. So, vaccination replaced variolation until some wingnut parents started having measles parties or something. If you have the option of getting immune to a disease that can harm or kill you without needing and avoid some of the side effects of getting said disease, why not take it? Variolation sucked. I wonder how many people screeching and hollering about all of this stuff. Yeah, chickenpox parties too. I'm too old to have gotten the chickenpox vaccines. Now I got to worry about shingles because I had real chickenpox when I was little. Matter of fact, when I was a teenager and I started getting a pizza face from the acne and the zits, I thought I was getting chickenpox all over again until I learned what acne was. Dad, I got chickenpox again. Look, I'm turning into a pizza face. No, you don't. You're a freaking teenager. No, that's the thing here. Yeah, I had the pox also. Yeah, it's like now we got to worry about shingles later in life. That's painful as hell. And there's a vaccine for shingles too, so we can at least get that one. Yeah, it's sad. It's really sad. It's one of the reasons I'm tossing around the idea. If I were to shut all this YouTube stuff down, I would seriously consider getting into local politics and starting a political movement, not unlike young people voting for Bernie Sanders or something, to capitalize on the grievances of the Zoomers and get them politically involved to strike back against the issues that the older generations inflicted on them. I've very seriously thought about that. One of them is this fanatical refrain among the American right wing about parental rights, which I see as little more than just the government rubber stamping abusive parents. What if you want to get vaccinated, but your parents are completely hysterical, like, no, and you get COVID, you're unvaccinated, and you have complications afterwards? I feel sorry for anybody who's like 16, 17, and they have that going on. It's like, no. People need options. People need the ability to express themselves. And quite frankly, if parents are doing their jobs, they should be raising their kids to be responsible adults, not turning them into people who can't actually make grown-up decisions when they get to that age, and they stumble and bumble and have to keep running back to mom and dad for advice all the time. I think a lot of talk about parental rights is just trying to get the government to rubber stamp abusive parents, abusive psycho parents who helicopter their kids, or, they want to turn them into permanently dependent, mama's boys or whatever the term is nowadays. No, individuals have rights. Young people are individuals. It shouldn't be the case where they have to sneak off and get vaccinated against COVID at age 18 Stuff along those lines. What does Dan have here? Anti-vaxxers are weird anyway. Like, you need vaccines to go to school, or that's what used to happen. Yeah, I mean, we've had mandates before. And we have polio coming back, and we have measles coming back because of dumbasses who have brought them back by being anti-vaxxers. It's like we have to. It's like when we're too far removed from the bad old days, people forget why they were so bad. But I'm not one of those people, let me tell you that. I know about my own family's history with the pre-vaccine era. My grandfather had an older brother who died in childhood, in the era before childhood vaccines. Did some ancestry.com type stuff. My grandfather's older brother was on the 1920 census for the family. He was not on the 1930 census. And I was like, why would the oldest kid of my great-grandparents disappear off the census? Did they send them away? Probably not. My family's in my family and my dad's side of the family very close-knit. That was probably a kid who died of a childhood illness during the 1920s. Childhood vaccination didn't start becoming a thing until around or after World War II. The baby boomers were probably the first to benefit from it. The polio shot wasn't a thing until the 50s with Jonas Salk and the rest of them. Till then, it was being scared. Parents were scared of polio, scared of their kids getting crippled, needing iron lungs, and stuff like that. But you get too far removed from those bad old days and people get spoiled. And we get crap like what we have today, where the virus that threw Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our president, into a wheelchair back during the interwar period in World War II and the Great Depression, now could create another FDR because it's coming back because of dumbass anti-vaxxers. Sorry, I don't support that crap. You deserve to get kicked out of society. You know, if you want to be the human version of a rabid dog that can spread disease. Sorry. Get with the freaking program. Risk reward. We've benefited much from the reward with a little bit of risk on the side, like side effects or something. Anyways, back to the story. The custodian was uniquely prone to it. She'll probably get it again because she's not wearing masks when cleaning bathrooms. I told her about this. I told the manager about this. But if she won't mask, she's waiting to get reinfected with something else. There's got to be a mandatory PPE for that position, that she wears something when cleaning the bathrooms, or we're constantly going to keep losing her every time she gets reinfected. So it's got to be mandatory. Needs to be part of the position, needs to be part of doing your job correctly to wear PPE when cleaning the bathrooms. It's just like, why would you? I mean, you go in somewhere, it stinks because someone took a dump in one of the stalls. The stuff you're smelling is something that was up someone's ass a couple of minutes ago. Why wouldn't you wear PPE when dealing with that? Especially, we got some jerks that'll take a huge Lincoln log sized dump and then not flush the toilet, because the toilet won't flush because the crap is too big, and they'll just leave it for the custodian. So it's a disgusting job because we get some people with zero manners whatsoever. Wear PPE, madame. And we have someone else. Let me check the timetables here. They just came back yesterday and they're wearing a mask, so I know they had COVID. Nothing else requires you to wear a mask at work except being out with COVID and coming back from your 5 days of isolation. So Thursday, Wednesday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for November. Symptoms present on Black Friday. They got infected probably sometime right before Thanksgiving at some maybe family event or going out on the day before Thanksgiving, whatever it is. And they just came back yesterday, I think, after their 5-day isolation. Today's variants can incubate in as little as 2 days. Usually 3. They've evolved from the week-long incubation period of the original ones. So yeah, and we'll be able to see who gets COVID by who's wearing a mask if they're not me. Because nobody cares about masking. It's like they can't put 2 and 2 together. And let me just say this. One last thing, since we're catching up on everything here as we approach the hour-and-a-half mark of this Pandemi-Rant. Solidarity with the Walmart workers in my neck of the woods who started masking again voluntarily. The company won't do anything to protect them. And how much work can you miss before you finally had enough and you start trying to protect yourself because you're sick of losing paychecks to this thing? I've seen Walmart workers trying to mask with whatever they can because of the douche muffins in the store. My 90s insults again. Like, Biden, Brandon said the pandemic was over. Yeah, break. People suck. But isn't that how the pandemic goes? Isn't that part of the reason why we have 1 million dead Americans, including one of my cousins, and my aunt was widowed. Her husband died from it. Multiple deaths in the family because of stupid people's stupidity. My cousin got it from his widow, who survived it. She was an angry anti-vaxxer. She bullied him into being vaccine hesitant. He's dead now. G'day. Whatever. I don't know if that sounds any good when I say whatever when inhaling like that. Heck, the noise thingy might actually block that. I don't know. People suck, though. So, once again, I'm going to try to be positive here. I'm going to try to say that this could be the last one, and that there won't be any more developments that'll necessitate me coming back to this topic. But we know how that's worked the past several times I thought I'd gotten to that point. So we'll see. As it stands, we have an alphabet soup of variants going around. COVID goes around through stealth transmission because the government won't say anything about it because a steady stream of people to the hospitals. Let's go back to the... we saw that stuff open? No, we have to relink. Go back to COVID Act now for the state of Connecticut, just to show you what's going on here. The flip side of the community transmission dropping off. So the government, won't make a big deal unless the hospitals are threatened. And then there's people going to be like, well, the government's not saying anything, so that must mean things are fine. When they're absolutely not. The government just won't say anything until the hospitals are in trouble because that's a political issue. Your health and whether or not you lose a crap ton of money or potentially end up disabled or dead, not so much. Here's Connecticut. Connecticut, as a state, there's parts of the state that are doing better than others. Cases are going up. Admissions are going up. Percent of hospital beds taken up by COVID patients going up. Let's take a look at these numbers here. And don't forget, also, people can act like they don't have the virus, not report test results, which is why I mostly watch hospital data, and Connecticut has traditionally, over the last several months, had the worst hospitalization data, the worst hospitalization per 100,000 residents out of most of this area. A little bit of a dip there, going back up a bit. COVID admissions per 100,000 residents. Pshoom, up to 14. I think we're like number 5 in the country for that. Because we have hospitals that'll take patients from Massachusetts and New York, so the greater Boston area, Rhode Island, and New York City, if they don't go to New York hospitals and stuff. So there's that. Patients with COVID, 7% of hospital beds, that is up. But the hospitalization data tells the real story, just like it did the last time I got super paranoid about this stuff. So, end of 2020, no vaccine. This is the UK alpha wave. This big hump right here and this thing here, like the Enron ride in the Simpsons episode. This is UK alpha. The final wave before there was a vaccine. The vaccine rolls out early 2021 for special groups. General availability in the state of Connecticut was around April, May. Sending the virus into a tailspin for the summer when Connecticut had an incredible vaccine rollout, and Vaccines Plus plummeted our numbers way down to here. until the immunity started waning and the Delta variant made it to the Northeast, which is what this bump is. Until the Omicron variant did the frog in the boiling pot thing to us, and now we don't think anything's bad unless it's like Omicron anymore. Boom! Big Omicron spike, and then a huge crash afterwards. But look what happens after Omicron is in the rearview mirror. Small bump in May for BA.2.12.1, then the BA.4.5 era and the BQ area, bigger and bigger bumps. But this is a steady stream of people going to the hospital, and now, as a percentage, going to the hospital, now a jump ratio-wise over here. 2022's variants have more consistently sent people to the hospital in the state of Connecticut than the Delta variant. Not so much the Omicron variant, but this is worse than this. But the government's not going to care because it's a steady stream of patients that doesn't threaten the hospitals. So, people are lulled to sleep because the government's goals with COVID are different than your goals as a tax-paying, working individual trying to pay bills, keep a roof over your head, and by extension, keep the economy going. And we wonder why we're having problems with supply chain hiccups and possible economic problems as the distant after effects of this darn virus. I do like, though, that after being kind of flat, the bivalent boosters cause an uptick in interest in vaccination again. Booster shot is a second dose. And the two crappier counties in the Northeast, Windham and Tolland, have an uptick in vaccination interest when the bivalent came. Here's Tolland County. Interest in getting your shots for the first time starts getting more of a thing when the bivalent booster launches. Windham County, similar issue. Many of the other counties, though, hit the 95% cap or close to it. Here's Hartford County. You start seeing that in the numbers. Litchfield County, did that hit 95? No, it's at 91. Litchfield County, let's go down south to New London County, where the casinos and the sub-base are. New London County is 95% capped. Let's see, Middlesex County capped. New Haven County capped. The 95% cap is for mathematical reasons. Fairfield County capped. Been capped for a long time. So look at the second dose in the booster data. See when it starts going up a little higher. So yeah, but Connecticut looks like this. Massachusetts looks like this. Rhode Island looks like this. And then there's New York. Patchwork, hodgepodge. Why have they had more problems? Why has New York had more problems than us? Because even around New York City, there's uneven vaccine adoption and coverage. And you go down to some of the southern states. Go down to Virginia, patchwork. West Virginia, patchwork. North Carolina, patchwork. South Carolina, patchwork. Georgia, sucks. Florida, patchwork. What did I say in the early days of all this crap? The only response to this kind of a virus that was gonna work is a unified, aggressive response to the virus. Hodgepodge, patchwork, you do you crap, not gonna work. Florida, hodgepodge, did worse than us. Other parts of the country, hodgepodge, did worse than us. Even New York, even Maryland, blue state, hodgepodge, depending on where you are, the Delmarva Peninsula or over here somewhere. President Biden's home state of Delaware, hodgepodge. New Jersey, hodgepodge. But New York is the smoking gun here. They've had more problems. There's a data issue in northern New England. Maine seems to be a little more consistent, except for up here. I do know there are some deep reds that leave states like Connecticut to live close to the Canadian border because they want to live in Maine. In terms of southern New England, though, very, very even vaccine adoption, coverage, and basically problems for the virus where it's tried to spread around here. And most importantly, less severe outcomes if people actually do get infected, assuming they stay current on everything. And there is so much propaganda out there that tries to keep people, that tries to sucker people into not doing that. Data problem with New Mexico. How about Arizona with all the community transmission? Hodgepodge. Same problems. Same problems. Then there's a mathematical side. Well, there's so many people getting infected that are vaccinated because there's so many people that are vaccinated in the first place. 3/4 of the population, 1+ dose. The unvaccinated are a small minority now. And as people become interested in the bivalent booster or not getting their ass kicked by COVID infections, we'll see that number keep trickling upwards. We don't have to get political. We don't have to get mandates involved. All right, new cases, worst places. Obviously, Puerto Rico has a problem. It's an island, highly populated. New Mexico, Arizona, third, and stuff like that. New York, not doing well. No other Northeast states there. COVID admissions, though. Connecticut is 5th in the country for the admission rate. How about the infection rate? Iowa, Florida, 2nd place. Arizona, 3rd place. Flip it the other way. I don't see Connecticut on the bottom of this either. Infection rate, anything below 1 is the virus losing ground. Above 1 is the virus gaining ground. The higher that decimal goes, the more it's spreading. Florida's going to have a COVID problem probably around New Year's in certain parts of the state. Why am I not surprised? Florida and Arizona high up the list. Again, I think last time we looked at this, Florida was number 1. Some things never change. Did we have a lag spike in the midst of this? I see something on the graph. I haven't been paying much attention to it. I think 4,500 is a better bit rate than the other stuff I was doing earlier. I'll check the replay. I'll be listening to this anyways because I like how it sounds. We did reset the camera. I saw it. I just saw it glitch. I saw it move back and forth. So we'll redo this. It's a problem with software controls. Turn the thing off and back on. So it's been spazzing the whole time. Whatever, man. So what are we going to do this weekend? A little bit of ESO. I got to figure out the video thing because it's going to suck if I don't get that tech video done before Christmas. I had another video I want to make that's ESO related that needs to be done before Christmas. I got to figure it out anyways. Let's see, anything else from the peanut gallery here? Or chat, I should say. Not from the looks of it, but 5:07 at the Geek House. Let's head into the weekend. And share that alligator video that I've been sharing on Twitter every Friday. Because one of the fun things about being night shift is you can TGIF in the wee hours of the morning. So, I hope to not have another conversation like this, but we know how that's been going. I'll do something else. I'll do another stream to knock the Pandemi-Rants out of the number 1 parking spot here, and I probably will do the chores early this weekend, because I think Friday, I got to make a bunch of phone calls anyway, so I'm going to be busy with more serious stuff. Saturday is going to be more my day to mess around and have fun. I don't know. 508 the Geek House. Things are going to get noisy here as all those day shift people start clogging up the roads. But yeah. I hope to not have to talk about this again, once again, but no promises. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by, and stay current on your vaccines. The bivalent booster, specifically targeting BA.5, was the United States insisting that we have the best vaccines in the world that are most up to date. I just hope we can fund the development of newer ones so we can stay in this number 1 spot and not end up buying something from China, given their track record. But they are pursuing nasal vaccines. I don't want them to get ahead of us on this matter. MultimediaJay out.